Okay, so we have learned that we can use include statements in PHP a lot like relative paths for images or for links in HTML, so that we can lead from a page to a piece of code that we want to include on the page. The only problem with this is that if we do this for every page, then we still wouldn't be able to maintain unique values for some of the attributes that we need to. So for example, each page needs a unique title. We've got that right in our prompt for the description of that. And we also need to describe each page uniquely in the content of the description meta. And so in order to do that, we need to use another feature of PHP, which is the placement of a variable or calling a variable. So the way that we can do that, let's start with the template, because right now our placeholder description for the template is in head code, and then our placeholder for the title is in head code. So let's get these out of here and put them into variables, and variables are basically the same thing that they've always been. So you probably learned about variables in like a high school science or a math class. And basically what they do is they store information, or they can be used as a placeholder for an unknown. In this case, they store information. And so it's going to be content that varies from page to page, and we're going to store those in variables. The way that it works is another two-part process. Okay, so within our PHP statement at the top of template.php, and before we call in the head code, that's really important. These have to go before we call the head code in the include statement. So I'm going to hit enter a couple of times. And I'm going to hit tab, and I can create any name for a variable I want as long as it starts with a $sign. I do recommend that you try to be consistent in your nomenclature though. So in this case, I'm going to use what's called camel case, which means that my first word's going to be in all lowercase, and then my next word is going to start with a capital letter, but there'll be no spaces between them if I need more than one word. And in this case, I'm going to start with the title. So I'm just going to call it title. And then I use an equal sign and then single quotes. Before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and step out of my quotes and put a semicolon to close this statement. And then I'm going to come and grab this page title right here. So not the title tags, right? I'm going to leave those because every page needs those, and they don't need to be different on every page. The only thing that needs to be different is what's inside of them. So I am going to cut, again, not copy, so Command or Control X. And then I am going to paste in between those single quotes for my title variable. And what that's going to do is on the template page, this is going to set what should belong here. Now it's not done yet, so mentioned to you it's a two-step process. So let's go back to the browser and let me show you where we're at so far. So if I come now to my template, you notice right now there's a title, right? There's a value in there for the title. And if I look at the source code, I can also see that there's a title right here. So what I've done is to move it into a variable. And so right now, if I refresh the page, that title goes away. And if I refresh my source code view, you see how the title is now empty. And that's because I've placed the content that I want in a variable, but I haven't done anything with the variable. So I haven't told the browser where to put that content. So I have to go back and I have to add some code in between my title tags that will tell the browser what to put there. And this is going to call for another PHP tag or a PHP statement. So I'm going to type an opening PHP tag in here. Remember, that's no spaces, all lowercase letters for less than, question mark, PHP. And then I need to use a different statement or function within PHP's existing vocabulary. It already knows what this command is. And that is echo. And echo just basically means print or put this here. And what I can do is call the variable name. So in this case, I'm going to echo title. I'm going to make sure to close that with a semicolon, and then I'm going to close my PHP tag with a question mark and a greater than symbol. And now, yes, I know I said that you had to have the extension of PHP for your PHP to work, so it might be confusing that I'm typing that in headcode.html. But remember, PHP is relative to the place where it's being put, not the file where it originates. So what's going to happen is when I go to the template page in the browser is going to grab all of this and just put it into this PHP file. And so this will be treated like it's in a PHP file when it's being used. It's really important that I name the title before I do that, though, because this has to be here when this is pulled in order for the browser to be able to find it. But once I do that, what I've basically said is right here, I want you to put whatever value I've assigned to the title variable. So what should happen now is, let me check for changes saved, and they are. So now when I come back to the browser and I reload my source code, you can see that now it's putting that title back there. And so now when I come back here, it puts the title back here as well. So let's do another one of those for practice and go ahead and get our description treated the same way. Now it's going to look a little bit different in the code because we're putting it where this green text is, but the calling of the variable is the same. So for example, here I can define this variable by staying inside my PHP tags above my include statement and naming a new variable, which in this case is the description, right, or description content. So I usually shorten that to DESC just because it's shorter than the whole word description. Again, single quotes, step out, make sure to close that with a semicolon. Each one of these statements has to have this closing semicolon or your code won't work. And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to grab not anything, I'm not going to grab the whole meta tag. And this meta must have a name equals description in order for the browser to know what to do with it. But the content, the value of the content attribute is what can be different. And so every single page still needs the content attribute. It still has to start with an equal sign and these double quotes. So what I'm going to do is just take all the text in green that is between these double quotes. I'm going to leave the double quotes in my head code. And again, I'm going to cut, not copy. So Command or Control X. And I'm going to paste that into my description. And so now if I come back to the browser just to see what's happening, if I go to my source code, my description is right here, and what I should see is content equals quote quote with nothing in between when I refresh the page. Let's see, I might have forgotten to save something. Let me check. Yeah, I forgot to save head code. Hang on. Okay, let's try again. I should mention to you, by the way, if you're working on more than one page in Sublime Text, instead of trying to remember to save each individual one, it does have a save all command. It might be worth using that and learning those keystroke commands right there to be able to use that. Okay, so let's go back to the browser now that I've fixed that. And what we're going to see is the content equals is still going to be there. The double quotes are still going to be there. Just the words in between those double quotes are going to be what go away. All right, let's try clearing our cache. All right, let's try again. It's really sticky right now. Let's check one more time. Make sure I got everything out of the way. I did. Let me say one more time for both of them. Okay, let's come back to the browser. There we go. Okay, so you see now we still have the attribute. And so the anatomy of the attribute is the content equals and double quotes, and the value is what we put in between the double quotes here. It's different from the title in that the value for the title is what we put between the tags, but an attribute is part of an opening tag. And so it's going to look a little different. We won't really see anything if we refresh here since the description doesn't show up. So really looking in source code is the most helpful here. Okay, so let's go back to our code. And we're going to do the same thing that we did here. It's just that it's going to look different because it's going to be in a different part of the HTML's structure. And so it's going to be green instead of white, and that's what's going to look a little strange. But I'm going to save myself the trouble of typing it out by just copying this whole PHP statement right here. And I'm going to put my cursor in between the double quotes of the description meta's content attribute. Paste. And then it's really important that I remember to change which variable I'm putting there. So now instead of title, it should be $DESC. And when I save that, what that's telling it is in here, just to put whatever value I've named in this description variable. Okay, so let's go back to the browser, see if it'll behave this time. And what we should see is some content appear here. And you see it did. So now we're in pretty good shape with our template. The one thing that we still need to do is update our style guide. Now again, you might be wondering why or how this is helpful if we're having to do it to more than one page. But the point of that is that we did the style guide page as we were going, so we would have more type to look at while we were doing styles. And it gives us a pretty good idea of why this is going to be helpful, because having to update each individual page is frustrating and also, opens up the door for a lot more room for error. But after this, once we get the template right, then as long as we're certain that it's right, we can copy it and name it for each of our different pages and modify those copies to be the pages, and we won't have to make these updates all over again. So the one thing I want to challenge you to do before we move on to the style guide is we still need one really important meta in here. We need a keyword meta. So the way that a keyword meta looks is very similar to the description. I would probably put it near the description. And I would start in my head code. And I'm going to add meta name equals keywords. And it must be that, right? And then it needs to have content equal to, and then we close it. And the way that keywords work is that what we want to do here is just list some of the keywords someone might type into a search engine if they were looking for something that was that matched with this page. So in this case, this would be something like template, comma, portfolio, template. But that doesn't really help us when we're trying to remember what to do. So what I usually do when I'm putting placeholder content here is I write it in the style. So it should be keywords that people would type into Google, or key phrases, so more than one word, separated by commas. And that's what keywords look like, right? So we're basically trying to target different keywords so that hopefully we would rank for those in a search engine. But what I usually do for this, just as a reminder for my template, is I start with use keywords, comma, and key phrases, comma, separated by commas, to target keywords people might type into a search engine. Right, and that's kind of a long phrase there, but it starts to let you know that these phrases can be longer. They're usually more like probably 5 words, 5 to 7 words, but still. Up to 5 will do. Okay, so now I've got this keyword variable, and what I want to challenge you to do before we do the next video is to go ahead and repeat the process for the description meta to get this into a variable, and then to print that variable in our head code so that we can use it. And we'll talk about the solution in the next video, but before we do, I want you to try to do this on your own, and let's see how comfortable you're getting with it.